End times theology and the people who choose to champion it are always very interesting to me because there's always some sort of weird, maybe unspoken motivation behind the reason why a lot of these people like to promote this so much. Sometimes it's because there's some excitement about juicing out of the Bible some kind of mystery that maybe they feel others aren't aware of. Now, if you're not careful, that can get into a playful little heresy that we know of as Gnosticism, where people feel like certain mysteries of the Bible have been revealed to them, but maybe not to other individuals. Sometimes it's people are just excited about this thing to come, so they're fixating on this future state. Sometimes it's because maybe they feel like through looking at things they read in Revelation that they can promote themselves as somehow more righteous than other individuals that they may know. Those are not the best of motivations, but the book of Revelation is something that's there, and there is a tremendous amount of meat there for us to nourish our spiritual bodies on. So what is Revelation really all about? Well, in order to really understand Revelation, you actually have to start out with something a little bit before Revelation. You see, in Revelation 1:1, what you end up seeing is that this is the revelation that Jesus Christ has been given by God so that he may share this with his servants, that they may know things that are to come. Now, when you look at that phrase in Revelation 1:1, what you end up seeing is that this revelation was given to the servants, not just something that John concocted or not just some random dream that John had. In fact, we end up seeing Jesus himself make some comments about the end times. We end up seeing references in the Old Testament to the end times, and then those references in the Old Testament are brought up again multiple times by people like Peter and people like John throughout several of the epistles and in the book of Acts. When we end up looking at these other references, it does an important job of setting the stage for what we're reading when we start looking at the end times. And what I think is especially interesting about some of these early pre-book of Revelation mentions of the events of the end times is that the objective seems a little bit different. It's not just about communicating information to you or giving you a bunch of metaphors. There's actually a very practical application of these lessons to our daily lives today that oftentimes I think some of the Revelation biggest fans end up missing in their excitement. In 1 Peter 4:7, we read Peter saying that the end times are near. Therefore, be sober-minded and prayerful. What you can see and how Peter is talking about the end times is it's not simply looking at the future state. It's not just simply saying, hey, so here's some interesting things for you to know about some stuff that may happen in the future. Instead, Peter is really saying, here's how you should act today because you know that there are things that are to come. And this makes a remarkable amount of sense. Let me give you an analogy. When I was previously a branch manager working with the Navy, I remember having a conversation with some of our IT. Now, I can tell you right now, even now that I'm not a people manager of sorts, I get extremely frustrated with IT. There's just something about a computer not doing what it's supposed to do that drives me up a wall. So when there's IT that's out of my hands and controlled by somebody else, that especially is an incredibly untenable situation for me. So naturally, when I have individuals that I'm responsible for safeguarding, for advocating for, saying that their stuff isn't working, I get super frustrated. Frequently what would happen is I would go to our IT folks and say, hey, this isn't working, and they would come back and basically just give me oh yeah, that stuff doesn't work right now. And then that would be the end of the explanation. Eventually I got them to a point where they started to understand that if they provide some kind of explanation of why, like they give me some sort of motivation for why these assets were unavailable, or why you're not giving me access to this software program, or why I'm having to tolerate my old cruddy computer, then it doesn't make it any better, but it maybe makes it a little bit more tolerable. In a lot of ways, that's kind of what Revelation does, is that it tells us the glory that is to come. It tells us what is going to happen in the future, and as a result of that, it maybe doesn't suddenly make everything we're going through right now fantastic. Maybe we're not jumping for joy because we have trials and tribulations and whatnot, but it maybe makes it a little bit more tenable. Like we can kind of tolerate it a bit more. And so you start getting into that important word, perseverance, because what we know in the Bible is that faith yields perseverance. And so you can see the mechanics of that taking place now as these individuals are telling us about the things to come that we read about all throughout Revelation, and that we're reading Peter and John talk about even prior to the book of Revelation popping up in our Bible. So when we sit here and we look through these lessons, we need to look at these as motivation to help us to do the things that we are called to do in the here and now. Otherwise, you're left in this weird situation where you say, well, everything's going to be so different later on. I mean, eventually everything's going to pass away and Christ is going to come back and everything's going to be awesome, so maybe I could just give up right now. That is not the lesson. Instead of people just relishing in the fact that, is there going to be an Antichrist? Is there going to be a 1,000-year tribulation? Is there going to be this or that? Instead, people would be better suited to do exactly what Peter and John, the person who wrote Revelation, instructs us in their books, which is to spend this time emanating the glory of God to people around us. Now, you will notice something that's very interesting in here. When you look at how Peter and John word our conduct in reference to the fact that there will eventually be an end times, a judgment day and a restoration of creation and all that, you end up seeing something that shifts paradigms a little bit. So in our world today, you're pretty much bend in one of two categories. Either A, you're totally on the side of just love and acceptance, and you just need to accept people for who they are, despite what decisions they make with, their life choices or sexuality or, any other manner of thing that, maybe some people would be judgmental about. So you just need to love and accept them, and that's one side. There's the other side, which is everybody's going to hell because you're all dirty sinners. And oftentimes the public will push you into one of these two categories, but that's a false dichotomy, because the reality is that truth and love and compassion, those exist in the same space. And if you read, what you'll notice is that in these motivations for saying there is a glory to come, there is a perfection to come, there is a new creation, a new heaven and earth that is going to come, and we have hope in these things, and that yields perseverance in our lives, what we can end up seeing are Peter and Paul pushing us towards understanding that we need to stand for truth, but we also need to emanate the love and the grace and compassion of Jesus Christ. Over the next few weeks, I want to get more into Revelation because there are a lot of people who have a lot of things to say about Revelation, and unfortunately, the people who speak the loudest are oftentimes people who are some of those individuals we talked about in the very beginning of this whole thing. Maybe they're trying to prove how pious they are because they know a whole lot about prophecy, or they're trying to, interpret, the mysteries of God through these pages. Instead, I think we'd be better suited to have this context that Peter and John lay out themselves in terms of what is this supposed to drive us towards being, towards doing, towards not being and not doing in our world today, so that we can be better reflections of Christ. Because ultimately the lesson of Revelation is this: one day everything will come to an end. One day there will be a new heaven and a new earth. One day Christ will come again, and when he comes, there will be that ultimate judgment, which is something that is terrifying, but also remarkably hopeful, because we understand that as God looks at us and judges our lives, he will see that the penalty for our sin has been atoned for. That is something that is great. Praise be to God that is the future that we are all heading towards. But what that means is that between now and then, we have this opportunity to be blessed beyond measure, to be a part of the glory of God. And that starts with being a reflection of God, a reflection of Christ's love, a reflection of his truth, a reflection of his compassion, and also a reflection of his stalwart dedication towards the things of God over the things of this world. We are called to be something that is greater than what the world would have us be. And if there's one thing that we can take away from studying over the next few weeks, some of these lessons in Revelation, it would be this: do not be conformed by the things of this world. Be conformed by the image of God, because ultimately that is what is going to persist after everything else has faded away. It's a lesson that I have for today. I hope you're able to get something out of it. Until we can meet again, God bless.